Women mutated by science gone horribly, horribly wrong, using and manipulating men into the sexual act, draining them of their very life, at the culmination of which, that through the sexual act they end up dying of cardiac arrest. What in the world is going on? It is a sexploitation film, a science fiction film, a weird animal mutation science fiction film. This is William Smith, Katie Saylor, 1973, Invasion of the B-Girls. At a government science lab, the source of everything that goes horribly wrong, researchers in entomology have discovered a way to mutate human cells. Women taking on the characteristics of queen bees, killing men, sucking, draining their life force out of them, a whole series of corpses, all from cardiac arrest. Hilarity ensues when they try to encourage the public to engage in celibacy, as if that's so totally not possible, even when death is the inevitable outcome. But hey, it's 1973, and it is a sexploitation film with a great deal of nudity and naked ladies and a bit of a science-y mystery. Enter a federal investigator trying to figure out what's gone wrong at the lab and why so many men of different walks of life in different areas of the community end up pulled into this plot and end up dead, ultimately uncovering that the entomology department is behind it. The lady there, the PhD, never trust a woman with a doctorate in a movie in 73. She has a chamber in which she is mutating women into something like a queen bee, and they are doing what their instincts drive them to do, to mate and kill. Mate and kill. Ultimately, however, the endeavor is all for naught, but they did not realize that the genetic mutation, the way that they were going about it, it was rendering the queens sterile. There was going to be no reproduction possible, which is why they kept using the equipment and the various goo to take women and keep trying to make new queens over and over and over again, absorbing the women around town and having them first kill their husbands in this fashion and then others in a desperate bid to reproduce, which they will never, ever accomplish. The whole thing exposed and all the evil bee women destroyed, or are they? And our federal investigator can rest easy. Okay, this is not much of a film. Why am I even reviewing this? Well, there's a couple of points of interest with the Invasion of the B-Girls. Puns aside, it obviously is a B movie at the very best. I had discovered that it existed solely because recently rewatching and reviewing the miniseries The Day After. I had loved that miniseries and realized then that it was directed by Nicholas Meyer, who would go on to direct many of the great Star Trek films of the Star Trek franchise when it was good. The Wrath of Khan, The Voyage Home, The Undiscovered Country, sort of the good stuff. So he's a very talented guy, and then it clicked. That's why The Day After was such a good miniseries about nuclear war in a time when there was all sorts of stories about the potentialities of nuclear war. And it just happened to be that in IMDb, it said that his first credit was as a writer on an obscure film in 1973. Nicholas Meyer wrote The Invasion of the B-Girls, and it was included in Amazon Prime. How could I not watch it and review it? There is some decent acting in it. I think the two major takeaways I should sum up. The major takeaways from Invasion of the B-Girls. First, the appearance of Katie Saylor, the actress, as the widow of the first victim. She was in a few things. She had a relatively short career. She went on to be on the one-season TV series, The Fantastic Journey, which I watched all of about a year ago and reviewed. She was missing from the last couple episodes of that series. Then it was canceled. She was battling illness and almost died. She ended up recovering blessedly, but soon after she sort of stayed out of acting, got married, had family life, and so she has a very short career, despite she was quite talented in her time. And so 1973, Invasion of the B-Girls, you have this appearance by Katie Saylor in a film that is done by Nicholas Meyer, and it ends up being his first credit. I thought that in itself made it worth going and watching this thing, even though it was rated R in 1973. So I knew primarily that it was going to revolve around breasts bouncing and whatever. But you can see that it is the beginning of something that's going to be the career of Nicholas Meyer, because even though it is a B movie, again, pardon the pun, and it is clearly intended not to be highbrow production value, nevertheless, it has a consistent plot and a well enough told story that sets it apart from other low budget sexploitation sort of films. You can do all sorts of those movies and nobody expects them to flow, like modern Disney productions or modern Star Trek. You don't even expect the plot to be consistent. You wait for something to come out of nowhere and say, well, what the heck? The movie's like not about that. And yet, this being a Nicholas Meyer movie, the first one, the story does flow correctly and everything you need to know is in there and it comes together quite well. And the performances are very good that are brought out, despite it's not very complicated stuff, but there's all the elements of something that you could take the plot and turn it into something. It could have been an episode of The X-Files or an episode of Star Trek, or it could have been a film that was a serious science fiction film. It's just not that. But all of the markings are there that says the people that made this made it for a purpose and an audience at a time for this to be sort of a sexploitation B film. But you can see the potential that it could have been more. Whereas a lot of those films, you look at them and they're like, yeah, this is the best that mixture is going to get. So it is out there. If you've got the stomach for that sort of thing, it is on Amazon Prime included anyway. Other places you can find it. Nicholas Meyer, written story, Katie Saylor, William Smith, who was in a lot of Westerns, 1973, The Invasion of the B-Girls.